So Pramod, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjeev. You're very kind with your words. Most of them are undeserved, but you're very kind. Thank you. And welcome everyone, and really appreciate your participating with us and through these keynote addresses, talking to the audience that we have out there. We have a strong tradition of the Life Sciences and Healthcare Innovation Forum that NASSCOM holds. Sadly, we can't do it in person because it is always an extremely vibrant area. And yet, today, I hope on this online version, we can actually generate the same, if not greater level of excitement, of vitality, and ideas. Cracking this COVID vaccine challenge is not a subject I am any expert about. But what I do understand is process and technology, and we have thought deeply about these issues from a variety of different sources, as well as different perspectives. Firstly, I was trying to think, what event in our lives has got more attention from the entire world than the process of this vaccination? Our doctors, our nurses, our healthcare professionals, all the ancillary services that are delivered have been entirely overwhelmed, not just here, but around the world, by this tremendous tragedy that has struck us. And now when we all begin to see a light at the end of this tunnel, however far we may believe that it is, the fact is it will increase the pressure and increase the strain on the same essential services workers that we all rely on so heavily and who have been under so much strain and pressure. This is a massive humanitarian issue. I don't think that the world has been paying this much attention to any event, perhaps, I don't know, since when? Since the moon landing, perhaps, that happened. With this intensity of focus, with everybody going into the details and trying to understand as best as they can what the future holds, particularly how this will progress over the next 6 to 8 months. There has been no other event of this kind in the past. And every country will struggle to find new solutions and find a way to crack this challenge. Up till now in the lockdown, of course, all of this has been a lot easier, except for the healthcare professionals. For an average citizen, they've been able to sit back and wait. They've gone through massive hardships, of course, with migrant workers and unemployment and all of those things. But now the challenge becomes even more, albeit shorter term. And the challenges, I think we all recognize, will require us to command ourselves and measure ourselves in terms of human society. What kind of a society are we? How will we deal with this fairly and justly? How will we be transparent about this? How will we make sure that the most needy get in first and that the others who perhaps have access and influence don't get in the way of that? How will richer countries support poor countries who do not have access to the vaccine today? Who will look after whom? And this is not just humanitarian, it's a matter of fairness, of justice, and social conscience. I am no evangelical priest to talk about and preach about how this may happen, but I cannot help but imagine all the various elements that will have to come into play. We are in India. There is no country that has the kind of side challenges that we have. No one else remotely knows how to address this kind of a problem. But I have two areas of hope. One, despite what we think during COVID and as it hit, the resurgence that we saw amongst volunteers, particularly in Delhi, I'll tell you, where I was working closely with the local government. Excuse me. There's a resurgence we saw in terms of volunteering to distribute food, make PPE equipment. India went from being nowhere to being number 3 in the world in almost 3 months in terms of PPE equipment. We went from having no masks to having plethora of masks. We went from having very little sanitizer, very few sanitizers, to surfeit of sanitizers. We went from having fewer isolation wards to the point where we had more than enough isolation wards for our people and with services for them in terms of food, water, and healthcare. These are remarkable. I've traveled to the US recently. The absence of this kind of collective volunteerism is completely missing in many of the Western countries that I went and saw. The queues that I saw there, the people I saw there, these issues were able to be tackled here. We are behind them in many, many ways. Please don't get me wrong. I'm a devout proponent of the US as well as of India. But the fact is, you could see that the Indian spirit came through extremely well. That's the first one that I know gives me hope. 2, India has the most massive vaccination programs in the world, which has been conducting for many years. Coupled with things like the electoral programs, which are used to tackling a lot of things at enormous, unimaginable scale, I hope we will learn how to tackle this challenge and tackle it well with fairness and justice that tells the world that we are a society that cares deeply about its people. Let me hit a couple of other points. And I hope you will forgive me for this philosophy here, but I think as I think about the world, as I think about the next 6 months, these are important issues that we must all consider. We will all want the vaccines, and therefore who should get it first? Are we going to be comfortable when we have access to allow it to go to those who need it first? Are we going to be able to divide up the share of the vaccines that we get in ways that are equitable, despite the fact that, as we know, we sadly have an enormous amount of corruption in our country, an enormous amount of diversion. Subsidies get diverted, PDS gets diverted, lots of things get diverted. But the one huge benefit we have today is something called the Aadhaar card, which hopefully will allow enumeration and a platform that will allow us to track this. But the challenges will be many. Communication will be key to explain to people what's happening and why. We have massive crowds, and if people hear that vaccines are being distributed, you can imagine how in India that can quickly translate into unmanageable chaos. We have to manage through that. There will be fakes, there will be frauds, there will be unequal distribution, there will be noise. And yet through it all, I hope our single tenet of working together as a country and citizens will hold true. And that will require an enormous spirit from each one of us. There are, of course, so many complex issues. Distribution, cold storage, last mile efforts, the number of vaccine centers that we need is estimated at over 1 lakh, over 10 lakhs. The number of people that we need to issue the vaccine who need to be certified and trained is a similar number. The number of places we need to get to is in the thousands and thousands of centers that we need to get to. And at the same time, there will be failures. There will be allergic reactions. There will be things that will go wrong, which inevitably will get the news media's attention faster than 99% of the rest, which will be successful. How do we cope with these issues? How do we make sure we track and trace people who have got vaccines? How can we make sure that the authenticity of our program comes through and is thought of as transparently by everyone? How do we do it perhaps as we issued the Aadhaar cards? So wonderfully done in such a short space of time and at a cost which was so substantially lower. Lastly, a couple of thoughts from me. One, I am certain, given the pace of development, as it has done for the vaccines, and of course there are many more eminent people here who can speak about this, but last year certainly everybody was predicting that no vaccine would be ready before June next year. Well, here we are, and the vaccinations have already started in the UK and the US. My view is that given the enormous effort and attention that everyone is placing on this entire program, unprecedented in the history of this world, no single issue has ever received such attention across the world like these vaccination programs and the production of new vaccines. We will hit oversupply very soon. So I believe there's going to be a period of time during which the government will have to control the supply of the vaccines and make sure it reaches the essential people. And then gradually, I hope they will open it up much, much more, because we will reach an oversupply where the market forces will take over. Equally, this is not going to happen without enormous public-private participation. That participation is necessary just because that's the way healthcare delivery works in India today. And that participation, if orchestrated well, can lead to wonderful results. And then lastly, why are we as NASSCOM thinking about this? Because technology will be the backbone. The technology of tracing and testing, the technology of enumeration, the technology which assists in the last mile delivery, the technology that assists behind making sure the vaccines get to the places they do in the fastest period of time, the supply chains that need to be built to achieve that, that backbone has to come from technology. And our responsibility as a technology industry is that we work enormously well with every state and the center to provide that backbone. This is a time for our IT industry to also step up and do what it needs to do to help. If you just think about the number of people our industry itself employs directly and indirectly, and if it makes sure just that those people get the vaccine in time and that we produce platforms that the world, all of India can use, just imagine the impact that would have in itself. I also hope we will take best practices from around the world, because the whole world is experimenting on this. And while India's challenges remain unique, I hope we can teach the world many things, as we did during COVID. And I also hope we can learn from them. This is a very dangerous, vibrant, exciting time when everyone's hopes are slowly perking up, when we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But it is that light which also makes it incredibly important that we do this with fairness, with justice, with kindness, and a supreme sense of humanity, and as citizens of India. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Sanjeev. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pramod. That was very insightful and directly from the heart. I could see a lot of good points. While this has touched our lives like never before, nothing like this ever before has touched our lives. And the way we have come out with things, as you mentioned, whether it is the response from the hospitals or the sanitizers and this and that, the way we responded, everybody responded in the society was, we didn't know that we had these capabilities the way it came out and during these times.
Absolutely.
And as you rightly said, technology will play an important role in this. And that's where we, as NASSCOM, definitely are going to be involved in it and put our thought and mind and might behind it, to make sure we contribute to the betterment of the lives of the people. So thank you so much, Pramod.
Thank you, Sanjeev.